What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today I'm going to start my deep dive into David Bowie's ranking and reviewing his studio albums. Because he's got a relatively big catalog, I'm going to break it up into the groupings that the box sets that the David Bowie estate or whoever is re-releasing in the past several years. 5 years, which focused on the first 5 years. Who Can I Be Now, which was sort of that middle Diamond Dogs through Station to Station period, A New Career in a New Town, the Berlin period. So I'm going to break up these reviews and these rankings in these chunks. And so for this video, I'm going to start with the first box set, 5 years, which was from 1968 to 73. But I'm going to include the album he released in 67, his official debut album. So there will be his first essentially 7 releases I will review on this one. I will rank those. And then when I do the next one, I will incorporate the 2 lists. So it'll grow as I do them. I am going to include Pinups, which is a cover album, just because I like it. Usually I don't like cover albums, but I really like this one, so I'm going to include it on the list. How did we get to Bowie from Zappa? Well, Adrian Belew, primarily. Ainsley Dunbar played with Bowie. I'm sure there's lots and lots of other connections. Put On Your Red Shoes, Dance the Blues, big nuclear explosion at the end of your video. Lots of connections. Be in my video. So Bowie. But when Belew had told Frank that he was going to leave and join Bowie's tour in the Winter 78 tour for Frank, Frank dropped a, "Why don't you go play with your Bowie?" Kind of some like, I don't know, like he wasn't too happy with the lyrics and a Yo Mama or two at the end of the Winter 78 tour. So apparently there was, I don't know if it was bad blood, but I think Frank liked having Adrian in his band. I mean, the 77 and 7, the fall 77 and winter 78 tours, kind of, the proof is in the pudding, and that is some delicious pudding. So anyways, that's it. I love Bowie. I think Bowie is an icon. Nothing but praise. These are all, for the most part, fantastic albums, but I do have favorites. And on to number 7. Thanks for watching. Number 7 is his debut album, the one I just decided to include at the last minute, the one that the 5 years box set decided to leave out for whatever reason. But this is him doing the very 60s sort of Baroque pop type vibe with non-traditional instruments, sort of almost a music hall vibe at times. A sort of writing musical, like sort of pop songs that like Syd Barrett dabbled in when he went like psych pop, that Ray Davies kind of dabbled in, that Traffic kind of dabbled in. But each of those artists did it like Syd Barrett, whenever he went in this direction, there seemed like this threat of madness underneath that Bowie doesn't exude. Ray Davies, I think, had a sincerity and a familiarity and sort of either a like camaraderie with whoever he was singing about or a complete disdain that was entertaining. And Traffic just did a trip here on those first 2 albums. And the best thing about this, I think, is Bowie's voice. I mean, Bowie's voice is a winning instrument in any era. He did write all the songs. So musically, he's very much dabbling in this, like, 1967 kind of pop psych, whimsy, very whimsical sounds. But a lot of the lyrics are darker. We're definitely getting hints of what he would be lyric-wise. We got some intensity to some of these lyrics. She's Got Medals, one of the better songs on here, has maybe a little gender fluidity to it, so we're seeing some of what he's going to do later on. But then we also have a song called like Rubber Band, which is about a musical band that is rubber, whatever. So it's clever and cute and whimsical. It's kind of forgettable. It shows the musical chameleon of David Bowie. Like, I think this is, of all his different phases, this is the one where, other than a lyric or two and the voice, Bowie is not as in it. The DNA of this album, it's just him. Like, he wants to be an artist. This is what's popular or contemporary at the time. This is what's contemporary. So this is what he's going to dabble in. To get a record deal, to get his name out there. But it's ultimately kind of forgettable. My number 7, his debut, David Bowie. My number 6 is his third album, 1970s, The Man Who Sold the World. I might be in, I might be in the, not in the common with this ranking. Um, this is when he's trying sort of his hard rock, psych rock, get a little bit heavier phase. Black Sabbath released their debut 2 months before David started recording this album. So maybe there's a little bit of that. Maybe he heard that and wanted to get a little heavier with this. Led Zeppelin, of course, had been around, other heavy bands. Plus, Mick Ronson joins his sort of crew for the first time ever. So you have a guitar player who's a guitar player. He's a musician who, like, it matters that he plays the guitar because he's a fantastic guitar player. So it makes sense that he goes in this direction. But ultimately, I think a lot of the songs are enjoyable at the time. Like, I like the album. I just think, like the debut, it's not what Bowie naturally is going to be. Like, Bowie can get heavy and weird at times, but there's a different vibe to it than whatever this is. There are some fantastic moments on this album, though. The opening Width of a Circle is absolutely fantastic. 8+ minutes is probably the most developed of all the pieces. It, like, sustains its 8 minutes well. Fantastic, weird, squiggly guitar solo in the middle by Ronson. This awesome opening sort of riff that kind of just pulls you along into the song and just kind of drags you in. Really, really cool song. All the Madmen and then another song, After All, have very kind of sound like maybe they're leftovers from the previous album, the one I haven't talked about yet, more of a psych folk feel. So it does feel like there's a connection, to the past. And then also The Man Who Sold the World, the song that Nirvana covered that all of a sudden got this album big in like the 90s. That also has this sort of vibe of like, almost leaning towards Ziggy Stardust. Like, you can feel like almost where that Ziggy Stardust mystique is starting to grow with The Man Who Sold the World. There's sort of this space, mysterious, otherly world vibe. And so it's a good connecting album in that sense, but I don't think all of it works. She Shook Me Cold is probably the thing that I hear a little bit of Sabbath in there. Got this awesome jam at the end that just kind of falls apart into like it's almost like they just couldn't sustain the jam and it had no choice but to fall apart. And it works and it's fantastic. And I think maybe just a little bit more of that on here. Black Country Rock kind of starts off in a Doobie Brothers vein, but then gets way too complicated and way too much stuff is happening. And then it's an overthought song. Running Gun Blues, totally violent anti-war song, just kind of crazy violent. Savior Machine is a really good groove to it, really good loose, jammy groove. And the Superman's a pretty solid closer. It's not a bad album. I mean, it's actually a really good album. But I just think the other 5 things on this list, I like better. So yeah, David Bowie as a hard rocker, it's definitely got some high points. But yeah, for the most part, really, really, really solid album. That's my number 6, The Man Who Sold the World. Number 5 is his 7th album, 1973's Pinups, which is a cover album, a fantastic cover album. The vibe of this reminds me of Guns N' Roses' The Spaghetti Incident, just because it sounds like songs that the band used to love and that inspired them, and they're just going to play these songs, and they're all very specifically like connected to David Bowie. Like that is the story behind this album. These are songs released from a certain period in the 60s that influenced Bowie as an artist. And it's just a fun album. Some excellent covers. You got a Pink Floyd. The best thing about this album is there's like almost a really stripped down, almost like garage punk ethos about it. It doesn't all work. For example, See Emily Play by Pink Floyd, the cover works. I like his cover of See Emily Play, but it just kind of doesn't fit in the more streamlined, like, let's just rock out nature of the rest of the album. The first 2 songs, Rosalind, The Pretty Things Rosalind, goes into Here Comes the Night, them. Like, it's 2 separate tracks, but they're segued right into each other. It's not like a continuous jam. And so that's kind of neat. We get a Yardbirds cover, I Wish You Would. The Mojo's Everything's All Right. 2 Who covers on here. I think those are maybe the things that don't work for me the most, especially I Can't Explain. It's a slowed down I Can't Explain. And it almost sounds like a version, like if the Who went back into the studio and like redid a bunch of songs, they would slow one of them down and make it like just feel different, like Clapton did with Layla. This is kind of how this feels. That I can't explain. And then anyway, anyhow, anywhere just doesn't do anything for me. The other song that kind of doesn't do anything for me just because it's one of my favorite songs all time from this band. But the Kinks is Where Have All the Good Times Gone. I think Van Halen does a better version of it. This one I don't connect with. But the Easy Beats Friday on My Mind works perfectly. Awesome. And the Mercy Sorrow might be the highlight of this disc. That's just a really, really sweet choice cover. The Pretty Things Don't Bring Me Down, another Yardbirds track, Shape of Things, which works. So it's just a really fun listen. I think this is one of those albums that as you look back on an artist's like discography, like maybe at the time this was like head scratching and people were like, what is going on here? But now it's like, yeah, you need this outlet. Like this is a very, as we would then find out with previous albums, Bowie's switching things up after this. And this very much seems like a start over type album. Like I got Mick Ronson in the band. Let's go out and do this awesome album for the last time. And then I'm going to go a different direction. We'll go a different direction. It's sort of an end of an era, and it's an awesome end of an era. A fun late night party end of an era. My number 5, Pinups. Number 4 is his second album, 1969's David Bowie, now called Space Oddity. This is sort of his folk psych album. Very much sounds like late 60s stuff, but I definitely think there's more of what we identify as the Bowie sound just buried in the lyrics, in the sort of eccentricity of the album, in the fact that it's all over the place, but at the same time, it feels all over the place, but there is definitely a folk psych root in David Bowie's voice, both literally and metaphorically, in so many of these songs. Also, whenever I am in the mood to listen to Bowie, if I'm not like going immediately for a specific album and I like run through the albums, I think about this one and I'm always like, well, am I in the mood for like this kind of folk psych? And then I remember that the opening track is Space Oddity. And I was one of those people who, I love that song, from as a kid. I loved it. When I heard it on the radio, I thought it was cool. Probably one of the first songs I ever liked as like a 6 or 7-year-old, right? Because it has a novelty hit vibe about it. But listening to it now as a man in his 50s, the music, the vocals, his voice, that ending that just kind of fades off into the distance, it is so lonely. It is so isolated. There's so much despair in it. It is such a powerful song. And like when you get past whatever the novelty of it is such a well-constructed like set piece of like haunting music. And then I want to listen to the album and I enjoy the rest of it. Unwashed in Somewhat Slightly Days is like a 7-minute Neil Young CSNY sort of country rock time thing that evolves or devolves into this like Not Fade Away, like loose acoustic jam that's just all kinds of fun. Letter to Hermione is this kind of ballady thing in which he's writing a letter to a former lover and the lyrics are just fantastic, like heartbreaking. And Bowie's voice brings like that emotion to what is otherwise a kind of a pretty simple song. Signet Committee is 9.5 minutes of Bowie going off. Like he's got a lot to say about a lot of things, the state of music and the world and culture. And the end of the song is one of those songs where like you have just this musical idea going over and over and the singer's just throwing out ideas like nonstop. That's what this song is for 9.5 minutes. And it's a very lyric heavy song, but not something like a Dylan Desolation Row where you have these cycles of music. But there are definite pockets that remind me of philosophically or just approach-wise, not actually the instruments being played, but remind me of something like Van Morrison's Astral Weeks, where it just sounds like there's these pockets of music where it's like the band is just trying to like bring to life whatever he's saying in the moment. And it's kind of formless and directionlessness, but it's so utterly powerful. And parts of this song give me that vibe. Janine is a really nice, sweet Americana song to open up side 2. An Occasional Dream, we get some folky flute music. Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud sounds like a crazy, weird, psych 60s movie soundtrack, but it's a great, compelling sort of Again, otherly, worldly, spacey song. God Knows I'm Good. It's just a straight up good feeling. Like somebody's out there's looking out for me, man. I'm doing well. And then Memory of a Free Festival has this electric harpsichord. Rick Wakeman is on this album that just kind of just is there hovering under this entire sort of slowly developing, slightly getting bigger sort of ballady space number. And it's just this like awesome little like this thing cushioning, but it's like an electric harpsichord. So it gives it this not quite circusy vibe, but almost like a something like that, but darker and more mysterious and maybe from another planet. Fantastic ending. A great album. Completely underappreciated, I think, and underrated in his overall discography. And it's a really, really fun listen. And it starts off with Space Oddity, and what is better than starting off an album with Space Oddity? But that's my number 4, David Bowie, his second album. Number 3 is his fourth album, 1971's Hunky Dory. Another one I might take a little heat for, not having this at number 1. But this is definitely the first album I think we fully get Bowie from start to finish. And he's like, this is who I am. We got some straightforward, sort of a lot more piano-y, almost not quite singer-songwriter, but maybe David Bowie's weird version of that. Kind of a simplified approach, but just with incredible lyrics and incredible medleys and his voice. Opens up with Changes, straight up classic. Oh, You Pretty Things, nice little fun poppy rocker type. Oh, you pretty things. It's a song that runs through my head a lot when I teach kindergarten, and whenever things get really, really crazy in the class, and like the kids are on the verge of losing it, that runs through my head in a good way. It like makes me go, oh yeah, this is a good thing. I don't know why I connect Bowie with that. 8-line poem, which actually has 9 lines sometimes, depending on what Google lyric engine you find, but it's like a short little ballady little 8-line song. Life on Mars, mic drop classic. Piano driven like ballad with some like Bowie's version of those sort of surrealistic character driven, creating a like world building, but it's like not any world but one you want to be a part of. Like it's not quite as sort of philosophical or like wordplay as Dylan. It's definitely not as like street tough, personal as Springsteen. It's just this weird middle crazy place that just you wish you lived in, but only Bowie lives there. Life on Mars, absolutely fantastic song. Kooks, which might have inspired the existence of a band decades later. Quicksand, the longest song on this album, really good. No, maybe the second longest song on this album. Really good, solid closer to the first album. The only weakness on this album, I think, is Fill Your Heart, which is a little bit too jaunty, happy for me, and it's maybe the one thing that keeps this album from maybe being a number 2. Andy Warhol, which starts off with his completely forced random weirdness in the beginning, which works because the song's called Andy Warhol, and then goes into this weird sort of south of the border Western vibe, which works because the song's about Andy Warhol. We get a Andy Warhol name drop. It's just an all-around weird song that the longer the weirdness goes on, the longer it completely works because it's about Andy Warhol. Song for Bob Dylan has this like almost Mott the Hoople, all the young dudes, not Mott the Hoople, all the young dudes type guitar intro that kind of brings us into it. That's really cool. Kind of and everything about this song. And then Bowie's cadence also has that sort of all the young dudes type storytelling vibe. So we're getting a little bit of the future in this song. Queen Bitch, straight up rocker. This could have been on Aladdin Sane, which I haven't talked about, which happens 2 hours later. Maybe a little not as polished for Ziggy Stardust, but it definitely has a roughness and a drive that would have fit right on Aladdin Sane. And then we get I don't know if they're circus performers or I don't know who they are, but we get an awesome story about the mysterious Bewlay brothers. Another one of these just weird world building David Bowie songs that gets really kind of weird with these weird vocal parts towards the end and just ends the album in this beautifully kind of semi-epic, weird, awesome, mysterious fashion. It's a great album. Like, it's a fantastic album. One song I think maybe pulls it down slightly, Fill Your Heart. But other than that, it's fantastic. If you have it at your number one, I understand. For me, it's my number three. Number two is his sixth album, 1973's Aladdin Sane, or is it A Lad Insane? Sort of the Ziggy Stardust hangover, but not necessarily a hangover like I imagine like if Ziggy Stardust is the grand party you're throwing, after the party you're walking around and finding like uneaten like trays of food or unopened bottles of beer, and this is all the stuff you sort of collected after the party, and some of it's really really fantastic, but some of it just kind of sounds maybe a little bit like the party still, but it's a great album. It's a little bit eclectic and all over the map, but in the best way, in like a true 70s way, but also in a David Bowie way. Opens up with the awesome, and the lyrics all the way through are just absolutely fantastic. A lot of really good storytelling. Watch That Man, great lyrics, awesome opening rocker, good energy. Highlight of the album, title track, Aladdin Sane, parentheses, 1913, 1938, 1970, question mark, close parentheses. Great vibe. And there is a piano solo, freak out, breakdown, madness, just cacophony that happens on this album. Who is playing the piano on this? Mike Garson, one of the most beautiful sort of weird piano solos ever, with sort of some saxophone just kind of lurking in the background, like trying to get in, but never coming to the forefront. It is such a great vibe. It is like this weird, chaotic, just fragmented type solo. It is so absolutely fantastic. And the vibe of the overall song is just, you'll love Aladdin Insane. It's just so like, late night, slinky, sultry. Oh, fantastic song. Drive-In Saturday, kind of a nostalgic, maybe touching with some 50s vibes, but it's a 50s that like, you recognize that maybe this has a 50s vibe, but it feels like a 50s you didn't live in. It's like David Bowie's version of nostalgia. Panic in Detroit has a claustrophobic feel about it. Like, I don't know, there's something about the riff and the way Bowie delivers these lyrics that I just feel there's this claustrophobic urgency, like we got to get out of there. It's kind of unsettling, but it makes the song work, and it's a home run. Cracked Actor, maybe the most straightforward poppy rocky thing on here, just a fun song. The live version on is it the Philly show, the Philly release, is just ridiculous. Like the guitar energy on that is fantastic. I am going to do all the live albums at the end. After I do all the studio, I will do a video for all the live stuff. Side 2 opens up with Time, which is sort of Bowie stepping forward as the crooner. I think this is his most like, I can sing and I'm just going to perform and give me center stage. Another great song. The Prettiest Star kind of ties in with the 50s vibe of Drive-In Saturday. The only real low point on this album, which if this had been a much stronger song, this might have been my number one, because the eclecticism of this album I love. But we get a cover of the Stones' Let's Spend the Night Together. Bowie sometimes does not make good choices as far as covers go. Then we get the Gene Genie, which is just a jam. It's just a vibe. It's just a groove. Love this song. And it closes out with the awesome Lady Grinning Soul. Just a fantastic album. It also feels like the end of this era, and then Pinups kind of just puts a pin in that. But yeah, this is such a fun, eclectic, kind of a little all over the place. And a lot of these songs will pop up on like live releases in the next couple of years, and the live version of this stuff is just so fantastic. But yeah, that's my number 2, A Lad Insane. Which means that number 1 is his 5th studio album, 1972's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. If ever an album gets by, I mean, the songwriting is fantastic, but if ever an album gets by on charisma alone, this one does. Like the confidence that David Bowie is exuding on this album, I just think is phenomenal. From sort of the opening, slowly building, dramatic, like 5 years, and just the plea at the end, to like the straight up like bravado of something like Moon Age Daydream, which sort of evolves into this weird little proggy jam. Starman. That's a song we in my class, my kindergarten classes sing. We do like performances throughout the years, and we do Starman a lot because kids love that song, adults love that song. It's just such a there's a Starman. It's just the whole character of Ziggy Stardust. This is a concept album, but pretty much the concept is David Bowie is playing a rock star from outer space, and I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a storyline, but I don't care. I don't need it. The songs are fantastic. Hang On to Yourself, just this awesome little jammy little fun groove. You all know Ziggy Stardust. It's a classic. Suffragette City, second to last song on the album. So you're journeying through this fantastic album. And like you're just getting classic song. Soul Love is a nice sort of like swaying soulful groove. It Ain't Easy. We get a little like maybe heavier type bluesy type stuff. Everything. And then two of the last three songs, you get Ziggy Stardust, you get the whole story, you get that awesome riff, you get Suffragette City, and then you end with just the like cherry, the bucket of cherries on top of the cake that is Rock and Roll Suicide. That is just like, wow. It's a confident album. It's a cohesive album. It's a fun album. It's a charismatic album. Like everybody sounds great. Much love to Mick Ronson. This is very much a David Bowie, Mick Ronson. Like that union is like the fruition. What this is just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic song. Album. Yeah. Not easily my number one. Not because this isn't absolutely fantastic, but because I do think Aladdin Sane is absolutely fantastic. But this doesn't have Let's Spend the Night Together. And this also has a couple songs which are really, really, really fantastic. And Moon Age Daydream, that's one of those songs that like, I'm one of those Moon Age Daydream people, which is like, this is one of the greatest songs ever. I saw Eagles of Death Metal. They opened for Mastodon a couple years back and they covered this. And afterwards I was just like going off on like, that was like the highlight of the set. I loved hearing that. And my friend was just like, oh, I've never been into that song. And I was like, what? That seems one of those songs that you either really think Moon Age Daydream is the jam or you're like, oh, I don't get it. I think it's the jam. But anyways, that's aside. My number one, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And those are my thoughts, people. That's all I got. That's what the list looks like in writing for now, if you want to look at it. Let me know your ranking of these 7, if you have opinions on these 7. The next video I will be dropped is the handful of albums that was in the Who Can I Be Now box set. If you're new to Bowie and you want to get into Bowie, the box sets are pretty fantastic. It's pretty much each album gets its own disc. So you're not getting a lot of new stuff. But as I don't know, I think it's a really well put together box set because you're getting all the live stuff from this period. You're getting like a CD release of like stuff that was like singles and B-sides and stuff like that. And then there's usually some other extra disc of like, you know, a proposed disc, like a Funky Nothingness Zappa-wise, something that like was never released but was proposed. And so there's usually something interesting like that. I don't know. It's an excellent, excellent release series, well packaged. I really enjoyed it. But anyways, that's all I got. I'm rambling. Yeah, thoughts. Comments, like, share it, all that stuff, and go listen to David Bowie, people. Go listen to his second album, man. Like, that needs more love. It's a really good album. And yeah, don't sleep on Space Oddity. That's a creepy song. All right, that's all I got. I'm rambling. Thanks. Peace. Talk to you later.